everybody. This is Jenny. Welcome to Miami Lit Podcast. I have a very special guest, Natalia. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm really excited to have you
Really?
here. Yes.
I'm so glad we reconnected and we found each other in the most random Miami way too.
That is such a good way to describe it because it is a very Miami way. Yeah. As big as Miami is, it's very small.
So small. It's like we showed up at an event that you were hosting, but I didn't know that you were hosting. And
Right.
I thought, who could I possibly see? And out of the couple of people that were there, I see so many people I know. And one of them is you. I was so excited. I was like, wow, we get to
Yeah.
reconnect and you get to see me, older and where I am now in
Yes.
life. So it's very exciting.
It was such a nice surprise to see you and to see the role that you came in with. So for people that don't know, you were a journalist covering the event that we had.
Yeah, I really liked connecting with the artist, which was on your podcast recently.
Yeah, Diana. She's awesome. And we could go on and on about her. But yeah, thank you so much for coming because
Of
that
course.
was so nice to have you there.
It was a lovely event.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I thought so too. I'm biased though.
It was
I
really
had fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun.
And we met a lot of good people.
And-
It was a good mix of, all the creative minds that you would
Right.
want to be at an event like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's give some details. So the event was an NFT event that we did for Diana, for Diddy, the artist. And it was celebrating her stepping into the crypto world and the whole thing. So it was meant for art lovers, or just like you said, anybody that's really into their creativity to just come and have fun.
Yeah, I think that it really introduced, I don't know much about NFTs, so just hearing it from the perspective and seeing how it affects local people like Diana, local Miamians, I think that was a
Yeah.
nice take to it too. So I was glad to be there.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was one of those things that you thought it would be scripted, but no, it was real
Plan.
life.
I think the universe sometimes has a way of working, and it kind of just puts you in the right places at the right time.
Right. So we alluded to the fact that we know each other.
Yes.
Let's tell people how we know each other.
Okay. I want to hear your perspective of it because it's interesting. You had so many students, so I don't know.
So you were one of my students
Yes.
in what was called Inquiry Skills or Critical Thinking class, which was all about how to be a proper writer and how to make that work for you in your professional life. So it was all about research and syntax and things like that and grammar. And you were one of them.
Yeah,
And you were
grade.
you were such a joy to have because you were always so prepared and so
Do you honestly
thinking
remember
ahead.
though? Do you
I do.
remember? 'Cause
I
I'm
do.
It's been a while.
No, I do. Actually, I remember a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you about that later, but yes. That's crazy. I feel like sometimes you have teachers and they either will remember you forever. I have a third grade teacher that saw me when I was an adult and she's recognized me because I guess I still look the same. And then there's some teachers that probably forget that you even existed. I think that's also happens a lot more in college too because they have such large classes and things like that.
Yeah, it's true. But no, I remember mostly everybody.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a good. You're a good
And
teacher.
sometimes I don't remember the names, but I'll remember the face for sure. Yeah. And I was in Colorado a couple of weeks ago, and I hear somebody like Miss Lopez, and I turn around, and it was a student. Well, now an adult.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's and I remembered him right away. As soon as I saw his face, I was like, oh my God, it's you.
I think it also helps that you were I don't want to say close to our age because obviously you were a teacher, but we're a lot more closer, I feel in age now than back then, obviously.
Yeah.
But now I don't see you back then. I saw you as an authoritative figure versus now it's
I'm
I
a
can call you
person.
Jenny. Yeah, you're a person. You're doing all these cool things, and it's a
Thank
two
you.
different people in one
Yeah.
kind of.
Oh, you're so sweet. But yeah, teachers are people too.
That's true.
I'm a person.
I think talking about your class though, that's what I kind of wanted to mention in terms of journalism and what I do because in ninth grade, that's kind of the first class that you take, and not a lot of people get the opportunity to take a class like that and so young. where you learn how to research, how to write, how to like be critical about information that's presented to you, everything that encompasses media literacy. So I like really, really remember when I saw you at the event, I was like, that class did have a like kind of role in shaping who I was and like who I became in my career, because it was the first stepping stone. I remember, I'll never forget the paper, also because you had like crazy rubrics that we had to follow and like a bunch of hurdles to jump. I loved it. You know, I was
Yeah.
such a scholar. I loved like writing and doing
It
presentations
was
and
meant
things
to
like that.
help.
And it did, and it did. And I wish that like every student, you know, of that age, like
Yeah.
in high school, could have that opportunity to learn those things, because it's so crucial. And I see it so much in the work that I do about like what I think is common sense of like how to consume media might not be for the rest of the population. So I think it was such a key instrumental role in like shaping who I would to become later on, you know.
Yeah. Oh, thank
Of
you.
course.
Thank you for sharing that. That's you know, when you step into that role, all you want to do is make sure that for whatever time you have with those kids, those people, that you do something that's good for them, whatever that may mean.
Of course.
So, thank you for validating that.
Yeah, no, of course. I think
I
teachers
wasn't
should get
always the
props.
best, but I tried.
Teachers should definitely get props. And I mean, in Florida and in everything, like just
Yeah.
how, I mean, they're getting more appreciated now and getting hopefully the pay raise, but
Hopefully.
at the same time, it's such a undervalued profession. So is journalism, but I could go on forever about that.
Yeah. No, I mean, that was the perfect segue. So now that the cat is out of the bag,
Mhm.
you are now a journalist.
Yeah.
Yes, how exciting. And it fits you perfectly.
Really?
Yes. Like if somebody would have asked me back then, what would Natalia do? I would have totally said journalist.
I think that, I don't know, I struggle with that concept just because, like, I feel like you never, when you're picking a career and stuff like that, in hindsight, I can see that it was like meant for me, like with my
Yeah.
whole story. But it's really hard to be 17, 18, 19, whatever. Even when you're choosing to switch careers later on in life, it's very scary to like be like, is this what I'm dedicating
Yeah.
myself to?
It's a big decision.
Exactly. But when I was that age, when I was trying to figure out what am I going to study, I mean, I looked back and I started journalism when I was literally in fourth grade, because we had kind of the same setup with like cameras. It was a small little studio and it was just like morning news.
Yeah.
But like just to know that in some part of my memory, I like started there is so fun for me, because it's like it's always been part of my life. I go to middle school, I started a newsletter with like my friends there for the school, and then again like that journalism aspect in it that at the time was just having fun with my friends. Then in high school with TV production and the online news site, I was always involved and always like returning. And you saw that I
Right.
really loved writing, like just any
Yeah.
type of research writing. So it all were puzzle pieces that fit. I just had to make them fit.
Right. And that's a hard thing to do. I mean, to ask someone so young, like, what are you going to do for the rest of your life or whatever? Not that it has to be, but you know what I'm saying. It's a big decision. And it's a blessing, but it's a scary blessing.
Yeah, I think I saw it always like as something secure. I never saw college as like, I mean, sometimes when you like go to college to be a doctor or like a lawyer, like that's your pathway. You're doing
Right.
that. But sometimes there's like you can take like
It's
a
not so
major.
clean cut.
Yeah, you don't have to
Yeah.
like, just because you're an English major doesn't mean you have to become an English teacher. You can, you know,
Right.
convert any they're like skill sets. What you go to college for is, for at least for me, it was skill sets.
Yeah.
It was communication, it was marketing, it was all these things that like tied well together, complemented each other. But I don't have to like dedicate myself to the rest of my life, which is kind of why I'm not doing a master's right now, because I feel like I can gain more experience in the
Yeah.
real world applying those skill sets that I got in my undergrad, and then figure out, okay, if I am going to put money into a program, I want it to be the right one, not just because
Exactly.
I want to get a degree, because right now it's the value in
It's
that.
a lot of money
Mhm.
and time. And like you said, there's just so much going on here that you could use your skills as opposed to sitting in a, you know, in a classroom,
Exactly.
in a college classroom.
Sometimes I'm like, I miss school, but then I'm like, homework. I don't know about all that.
It's interesting because when you're someone that enjoys learning and the process, it's hard to step away and to
Yeah,
say, no, I'm not going to enroll in that program.
of course.
But yeah, there's just so much going on all the time. It's, that the world is your oyster, as they say.
Exactly. And I think I learn a lot through the job that I do because
Right.
a journalist, you get to talk to people that are very specific in certain fields. And then even though you may never learn about that ever again, or it's not something that, you come across by very often, you get to kind of become a mini expert like for a day and kind of get the information that the person that does know
Right.
about it gives you and make it so that the rest of the population understands it. So I think that I get a lot of my learning through my job.
I think that's such an interesting point because a journalist is not just spewing information, right? You are taking something and making it in a way that's approachable and digestible
Yeah,
to the everyday reader, because at the end of the day, you want news to be accessible. Not
exactly.
everyone reading your article is going to have a PhD
Yeah, or know
or
what a
or
specific
know
word is.
exactly. So I think it's so amazing.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
fun.
what you guys are doing. It's um it's a big responsibility for sure. So before we dive into your journalism
Okay.
life, let's talk about growing up in Miami.
Yeah, I think that I want to preface with I used to I don't want to say I hate Miami, but growing up, and when I'm saying growing up, I would say like middle school, beginning of high
Yeah, once
school.
you start to become aware
Yeah,
of your
exactly.
surroundings.
Cause like you're no longer like being taken to the park, like
Yeah.
might be going to the mall like Sunset Place with your friends and things like that, and you start to realize, especially back then. I mean, I wish I was a teenager now, or like because there's so much more now to do. But I feel like I would say like that was almost 10 years ago. Um, there was less to do, and Miami died down really quick. Not that I was trying to
Yeah.
go clubbing at 13, but like I wanted to be able to do. There wasn't as many museums
Mhm.
or many resources, or maybe I just wasn't well connected. I lived
Yeah.
Miami's very bubble living. You
Yeah.
either get in your car, go to school, or go to work, come back, maybe like do stuff with your immediate community, but there's not. It's not like you're constantly like unless you live in like downtown Brickell and you
It's
walk
definitely
around.
changed a lot in the recent years. Like the kids that are growing up now have a different Miami than what we had.
Exactly.
Because it was obviously I'm older than you, but it was like the mall, the movies, and like a park or a beach.
Mhm.
Though those that was the extent of your options on what you
Mhm.
could do as a teenager. There weren't all these like cool activities, these museums or
Exactly.
all this other stuff that they have now.
So I was lucky because I Winwood was coming into the mix, like when I was in like beginning high school. So I would go to Winwood a lot. Like I would go on like dates to Winwood. I would go out with my friends on Winwood, and obviously like we couldn't. Winwood wasn't even. I don't even know if like all the clubs were still there. Obviously I wasn't going to the clubs, but just being at the walls, there was like
Right.
places to like eat.
It
All
was
the food trucks. Yeah, it
exciting.
was
It's still
seeing the
exciting.
art, like
Yeah.
it was very like you think it made you feel grown up in a
Yes.
sense. You're like, wow, I'm here. There's people from like tourists, and like you're just like part of it. So growing up in Miami at that time, my I don't know to say again hatred, but like just my perspective of it shifted completely because I wanted to go out of state for college, and I didn't end up going out of state because I started becoming more aware
Yeah.
of how amazing Miami was. I before I would not really take public transportation or anything, but in high school, like now that you have that freedom to, I like started to taking the free trolleys everywhere or the train, and that opened up my world to like really admiring how beautiful Miami is because it's one thing driving through, and
Yeah.
like
You see it
being on
from
your
a
phone
different
or whatever.
perspective.
Exactly. So I think growing up in my late like high school years, I really became more aware of how amazing and how much potential Miami has. And I guess we're seeing that with everyone moving here now that there's
Yeah.
definitely
It
potential.
feels like the rest of the country now sees what we've all seen the last couple years, living here and growing up here. Because yeah, it's as much as like it was it felt like the little city that could back in the day, like a couple years ago, you still knew, you got the sense that like, okay, I live in a special place. The beach is amazing. There's maybe it's not exactly what we want. It's not New York Museum type
Yeah.
thing, but we have something good. So
It's not Kansas. It's not like Wisconsin. Like, we're not
yeah,
in the middle of nowhere.
exactly. Yeah. Right. So it's yeah, it's kind of nice how everyone's all of a sudden aware of how awesome we are.
Yeah, so growing up, and also I feel like at that age you're more aware of like social issues and what's going
Yeah.
on around you, because before, like, you're just excited to go see your friends at school or whatever, but once you become more aware, even, and we can segue back to my alma mater, your previous
Yes.
workplace, about that, like, you become more aware of who you are, your identity, the people around you, your relationship, and like relation
Yeah.
to that,
Yeah, how
like, and
you
to the
relate to
others.
the world and where
Exactly.
you fit in everything that's going on. Yeah.
Exactly. So, for background, in the school that I went to and you taught at, Coral Gables Senior High, they have what's called an IB program.
Mhm.
And it was very much catered to white people and to rich, like the affluent part of Coral Gables. Obviously, the
Right.
program is a program that is magnet, so you get to apply for it, but it's 4 years. And the people that start the program versus the people that finish it, you can see the stark, like, difference. And so I was very much aware, and I had a lot of friends that either dropped out of the program, or, I was basically, out of my whole friend group, I was probably the only one that finished
That
IB.
stuck with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was because I love the program is great in terms of preparing you for college, in
Yeah.
terms of showing you how to research,
I
like
agree with that.
scholarly, like it's the perfect program to prepare you for college and for you to get credits. I went to FIU completely free because of it. I was just really in a good place academically, but you also become more aware. And I had this project in college. I had this class, which was the best class. Like, again, I love my teacher. I hope he still remembers me, because he's my favorite professor that I ever had in
What's his
FIU,
name?
Matthew Acevedo.
Oh,
I
I
have to
don't.
look him up. I'll literally send him this and tell him I shouted him out,
Yes,
because there's like,
Professor Acevedo. Thank you for everything you do in the classroom.
yeah, so it's like people like you and like him that you just are very memorable in shaping like your education, because they just present something that might not be like traditional school stuff, but
Right.
it's like helpful. So
Yeah.
his class, it was an FIU honors class, was analyzing social issues through watching HBO The Wire. Have you ever seen The Wire?
Of course.
And first of all, that it came out in like early 2000s,
Okay, I want
right?
to take this class.
It came out in the early 2000s, so like it wasn't like it was on the TV when I was like,
Yeah,
at the age to like understand it or whatever.
that's true.
So it's this, we're watching, I forgot how we even accessed it, if he gave us a code or whatever. We'd watch episodes per week and like write reflections on it, right? Like very like tie scholarly articles to what we would see in The
Right.
Wire. And like, shout out to The Wire, because it's such a good show
It is.
for like learning about America, like, and learning
Yeah.
about the issues. Like, I want to rewatch it. And also, like, the actor's amazing. And then, so it was just 10 out of 10. So one of the seasons is, I feel like I'm talking a lot.
You're not. No, please.
But
you're
one
perfect.
of the seasons of the show is like showing the school system. And obviously they're showing the school system. It's in Baltimore, right?
I think so. I'm trying to remember.
I think so. So it's the school system, and it's basically how it's underserved, how like the trouble kids are like trouble kids, and they're creating the stark divide. And low key, I was able to see that in my own high school, and I was able to like reflect on that, because at the time I was like, oh, I'm just in school, like, it's not my problem. It's like, like, it's adults that are kind of creating this situation,
right.
So I didn't really like think too much of it, but taking this class and seeing that, and I had a project where like I had to kind of highlight like a school or something. I don't remember the rubric or what was like the things, but I decided to do like an article style like reflection or feature on that divide between IB students and non-IB students. And it was like, I feel like it was controversial, like, for me to like, I don't know, because I had such a, like, I was involved, like, I was part of IB,
right.
I'm biased in a sense, but the fact that I had the friends, and the fact that like I got all the voices from people that were both finished the program and didn't finish the program, and they all kind of echoed that, yeah, like they got more opportunities to be in yearbooks or be part of student government, all of these key things that prepare you for life, that give you like skill sets that, you know, had I not been part of like TV production or part of like online like news sites or stuff like that, maybe I wouldn't have even picked journalism. So to think that there's kids that don't have access to those type of things because of favoritism or because of whatever political stuff goes on in schools.
Yeah.
The Wire was perfect to kind of show that and me mimic that with my experience. I would love to hear what your thoughts about it.
I have a lot of that. How much time do we have?
Just a little preface of it, because I know it's...
No, it was definitely something that you could see, you know, from the adult's perspective. You could see it. You could see the population change between your IB class and your regular class, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, and the fact that they're called that, and like it's used by kids and adults, you know?
Yeah.
Like, why is that a B and then the other kids are regular? Like, what does that say about you? Like,
that, you know, that's reminding me of a conversation I had in class one time, because I was asking the kids something, and I remember being upset because I had asked them to do something and like one person did it out of like 38. I remember being really like upset, and someone said, "We're not your IB class. We're regular students." And I remember that like threw me for a loop, because
I think I would have cried if I heard a kid say that.
I cried at home. Yeah, not in front of them, but I did cry at home. And, you know, it was very frustrating, because then I had the guilt, like, did I make them see themselves that way?
Yeah.
I never treated them differently as far as I was concerned. They were the same. So then it created this deeper conversation. Why do you see yourself that way? You are just as great as you want to be, you know?
Exactly.
You don't need a title that says you're an IB in order for you to have a certain level of success, you know? Like, are you excusing your lack of wanting to do things?
Exactly.
Your lack of goals? So you're saying you don't want to get an A because you're not an IB? Like, it was a lot, you know?
Of course.
And then it just takes you into this rabbit hole. You know, where does this problem start? Did the school create this issue by separating everybody? Or is this like a cultural thing? Because technically everyone can apply to the IB program. Why aren't certain kinds of kids applying?
Of course.
Why do they feel intimidated, or that they wouldn't succeed, or they just don't fit in because their parents don't drive a Mercedes? So it was like a whole component of things. And even like to the adult side, the teachers, I know of certain teachers that would say, I only teach IB. And to me, that was always so weird, because I just wanted to teach.
Yeah.
I could teach anybody. Like, who cares? I don't care what class this is. Just give me a student so I can talk. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's definitely like a complex.
I think it's systemic. Like, it's literally very like, what came first, the chicken or the egg?
Exactly.
Like, it's kind of just feeds into itself. So being aware of that in college and like looking back and kind of having the idea of creating this into an article, because I had already solidified that I was going to be a journalist, I reached out to one of my IB teachers and I was like, hey, would you like to talk about this? You know, to stir the pot. No, but to like have an actual perspective. And he said he didn't want to stir the pot. That was like his actual words. So it's like, even like, maybe people are like, when you were in that position, aware of like the divide, but like they kind of just accept it. And I'm not trying to go to like the high school and change it or whatever, but it's like bringing up, you know, conversations that are important. And that's what journalism does, you know, finding something that you notice and then kind of like looking into it more and hearing the voices and kind of seeing like, hey, this is an issue. So I always remember that as like that class, again, the Wire, social issues, my teacher, Dr. Acevedo, Mr. Acevedo, just because it was such like mind-blowing, honestly, to like be able to see something in TV, something that was produced, like had a lot of like, you know, energy put into it, and it mirror in some aspects something that I went through here in Miami, you know?
Right. Yeah, you can definitely see the links between, and that's just a testament to how great of a professor he is, because he was able to take something that's pop culture in a
Mm-hmm.
way and translate that into what you guys could use in your own educational way. So it's that's awesome. That sounds like such a fun class.
It was
Like I
the
want to take
best.
that class.
It was literally the best. I was such a procrastinator though. So, and
I think that
he's
just
gonna laugh.
comes with writing. I feel like
Yes.
all writers suffer from some form of procrastination, which is not, you mentioned my rubrics being crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they were so like detailed, because I know we tend to procrastinate, you know. If you're a writer by choice because you love it or just because you have to,
Mm-hmm.
because you're in school or your job or whatever, you that's just a mountain we all climb, like
Exactly. I
procrastination.
think like no one's ever excited to write. Like no journalist, no writer. Like we're never excited. We're excited after we start
Yeah,
writing.
it's
But
like going
like
to the
same.
gym. You never want to walk in there, but then once you do, you're like, yes, this feels so good.
Exactly. So same
Yeah.
thing with writing. So in that class, and we'll wrap up the wire situation, but in that class, we had it for 2 semesters. So he already knew how amazing I was in the class, not to toot my own horn, but I loved it. Like I literally
Yeah,
like took it seriously. I was like, I watched the episode, I'm gonna analyze, I'm gonna write 5 more pages than needed because I just like really enjoyed it.
I have a lot to say.
Exactly. And so in the second semester, I mean, I was working full time while I was doing college full time. So I hadn't submitted anything for like 7 weeks. So like mid semester, like basically. And he was
Oof.
like, he sends me an email. He's like, Natalia, I know you're great, but you haven't submitted anything, and that's fine. I just want to make sure that at the
Yeah.
end of the semester you will. And that was honestly the worst and that made me never want to procrastinate again because I had to like compose 20 pages worth of like
Ouch.
writing in like a week or maybe even less. And I was like, yep, this was like
You
so
learned your
I learned
lesson.
a lot from that class to say the least, but I really enjoyed it. So I just love creating those connections in the real world and
Yeah.
anything I learn. And I think that's why I love journalism so much because you really get to like make those connections and bring those voices out and like feel like you took something out of it afterwards. Like feel like the
Right.
job that you did was something meaningful, if not
Right.
just to you, but like to like other people
It
to the
has a deeper
community.
purpose than just doing something.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can see why it's such a good fit for you, because you care a lot about a lot of things.
Yeah, I think
So,
a misconception or something that they wanted to push a lot in the journalism industry, especially like before, by before I mean like golden age of
yeah.
journalism and stuff like that, would be like you have to have no opinion because that's the only way that you're a true journalist, that you like are so impartial that you're just going to report the facts. And of course it's important to like separate commentary versus like actual facts, but we're all human. Like I will always have a perspective, you know. I can't say that I don't on social issues or whatever it be, but it's more so like getting the facts of whatever story it is, getting the correct voices, and whatever perspective I have on it shapes maybe how you build the article. So like an example,
Right.
like let's say I'm covering abortions right march, right? An abortions rights march. I am a woman. So do I not like have a perspective on it? Of course I have a perspective on it.
Yeah.
But I'm there to tell, not to like write about what I think or don't think because that's a blog. That's like, you know, that's just a rant. It's about okay, why did 200 plus people decide to show up in a little park in like South Dade to protest? You
Mhm.
know, like who's watching? Like, why do they care so much? Who are the voices? Why are they out here advocating what is being done? And those things, that's what makes journalism. It's not just writing whatever you want or giving your perspective. And I
Right.
feel like right now in this age, everyone thinks it's so biased, whatever. No, it's literally there's things going on in the world. And then I'm a human, so I would just want to tell that story. And, you know, I don't know if that makes sense.
Totally, 100%. And I'm glad you brought up the bias issue, because we do see a lot of like mainstream media being accused of being extremely biased, and sometimes it's true, they are biased and it shows. But how, I wonder, like, how do you and your peers, your colleagues, deal with that huge pressure?
I think that it also depends the medium of journalism that you're into, and like, so I am so blessed. I don't think we've even mentioned where I like have been
No, we
through.
haven't. We need
Um,
to say that.
we just started talking about The Wire. So I did an internship towards the end of college at WLRN, which is the South Florida affiliate station of NPR public media, and so I loved it. And I freelance for them, basically as like a part time. um, I loved it so much because it's public media, it's public funded, so it's less so of like having to cover a specific issue or like, don't do this, don't do that. It's literally we're for the public, funded by the public, doing the work for the public. And that's the basis of
I love
journalism.
that.
Yeah, and I really wish more people, especially more people my age, gave NPR and WLRN love because I'm biased, of course, because I've done so much work there, but I really think that they have such a good mission. And unfortunately, being funded by the public means that you have a smaller newsroom. You
Yeah.
don't get to cover everything. But if people really were to like put time and energy into like making that connection with such an important local community newsroom like WLRN, you would get like the returns tenfold because you know what's going on locally. But in terms of the bias that we were talking about, I think that if you're gonna watch like TV, like broadcasting news, they're always gonna show you something dramatic because they
Mhm.
want you to keep watching. They'll show you the same thing at 10 o'clock and at
Oh
11 o'clock.
my, yes. I never understood that.
It's because they think that some people tune in at 10, some people tune in at 11. It's literally repetitive. I had an internship at Univision,
Mhm.
and I was able to shadow a reporter, and like they'll literally drive to, like, say, in front of the courthouse just to get that shot of the courthouse in the
Right.
background. And that's such a waste of time.
Yeah.
Like, you're driving
That's a
an
good point.
and it's just for the visuals, and the package is a minute long. Like, hi, yeah, I'm reporting here, and then okay, let's go, and then there's got like it's not. I don't want to say it's not important, but it's for show, and so that's what turned me off completely about that type of broadcast, TV broadcast, because I don't want to do something that's like just for the views or
Yeah.
things like that. So it really depends what type of journalism path you want to do. So the CNNs, the Fox, they're all going to have that blatant bias that unfortunately is associated with them. They do great reporting. I'm not even going to knock like either side. Like, there's
Yeah.
reporters and there's work being done, but it's like they're going to have what's going to keep people tuned in for longer.
Yeah, it's that drama, that like blatant manipulation and trash talking that um it should turn a lot of people off, but apparently it's not. It's bringing more people in. It's like a car crash. Everyone wants to watch.
Yeah, it creates these little bubbles that like people just want to like affirm what they already believe in or what they already
That's such a
think.
good way of putting it. Yeah. It's like everyone feels like they're in their tribe and they're going to hang on no matter what.
Exactly. So I think that seeing it, finding the right like publication or finding the right motivation to whatever journalism is what kind of keeps me at bay at that. Also, I don't I cover more of like human perspective stories. Like, I like to humanize a lot of my stories. So you'll never catch me like really covering. I have like covered like government meetings and stuff like that, but that's not what fuels me or inspires me as a journalist. It's more so like finding a cool little story and then seeing like how does it affect people? What's the people
Yeah.
story behind it? Obviously, like reporting on shootings and reporting all of that is important, but I want to create work that transcends just that one day. Because if there's a shooting at Aventura Mall, okay, which was actually one of the things that happened like a couple days into my internship at WRN, it was relevant that day, but
Yeah.
then they close the mall, they deal with the issue, it's
And that's
done,
it.
and then you read that article now, no vale nada. Like, it's not
Yeah.
relevant anymore. And so that's why I try to make stories that really, even if it's like, for example, the presidential elections, that's what I started my internship in 2020. We had the pandemic, the presidential elections, the
What a year
protests.
for you to enter the workforce. My
Yeah.
goodness.
And so even though the presidential elections like came and went, the
Yeah.
stories that I told during that time of like the Latinos that were pro and against Trump and all that tension here in Miami, that's gonna transcend.
For sure.
And people are gonna look back, maybe not at my article specifically, but it's there, it's on the
Yeah.
internet. It's like kind of like a memento of what happened in that point in history
Yeah.
in Miami.
You're capturing this a pivotal point in history and the city all packaged into one article.
So that's what I like.
I love it. I love it for you. And I'm so happy that we have someone like you as a local journalist.
Thank you.
Yeah. What has been your favorite piece that you've worked on so far?
I'm gonna say a few because it's just been so like amazing and crazy. So I started my internship in May 2020. May 31st, I believe, was the large scale George Floyd protest where they shut I-95 down. It was like 4,000 plus people. That was my first week of my internship. In the pandemic, they were like, "Are you sure you even want to go out? Like, mask? Like, we had to be very." It was very scary. It was 2020,
right,
you know,
right at the height of the madness and the fear that we all had because we didn't know.
But me being young, fresh, and ready to go, I was like, "Yes, I'm gonna go. I'll be fun. Okay, and I'm gonna cover it."
That's so crazy. I would have been like, I quit.
No, I was the one pushing for it. Like they were very protective about COVID and all this stuff. So I'm the one like, no, I want to do it, and I go, and again, going back to the thought, like the misconception, in my opinion, and to other journalists, it might not be that way, where they think that you can't have like feelings or you can't like, like of course, like I'm there in 4,000 people. I've never seen anyone show up in Miami like that. Like Miami people usually
we don't have time for that.
They don't have time for that. They don't care, honestly.
Yeah.
And like, see, no, it's not affecting me. It doesn't matter. But all these people my age too, it was so many young people just rallying against something. And to be a journalist in that moment, being on I-95 shut down, walking it, like literally I got so emotional just because of the sheer like impact. Like I knew that this was monumental and that it was my job to again kind of like
bear witness to
it. Exactly. I even got tear gassed. So that was great. It was from afar.
I love how you laugh about it. I got tear gassed
because I feel like
you need a badge or something.
It was like a little medal. No, it wasn't fun. It was from afar. It got like very hectic and violent after we left. Like there was like a couple of groups, but it wasn't even like the protesters, and that's like also part of shaping the narrative. Right. Like I'm not gonna let that a couple people like started to act up ruin the 3-4 hours of peaceful marching that I saw, and that's like. Right. In TV world, they would sensationalize it and be like, "Oh no, they're in curfew now because some people like lit a police car on fire." Like, yes, that happened, but that's not the. But
there was more to it.
There was more to it. So focus on the bigger portion of it, and not what's gonna get you more clicks or views or tune-ins or whatever. So that was my first week, and I loved that story. I followed up with it on I like to do a lot of pieces that have Gen Z focus on it. And so, with the pandemic, we saw that everyone was transitioning to online activism. And we were like, is it just for the likes? Is it to follow like, oh, like I'm woke or like I'm part of like, helping, but you're not really doing anything, So I did a feature with my co-intern at the time, one of my best friends ever, Amber. We did a feature together where we interviewed Gen Zers and saw how they were trying to become activists in a moment where like maybe they don't even want to go out and protest because they can't because of COVID or whatever. And so that one was a good piece too. And I got to cover a lot of fun stuff in 2020. It was the best year to be a reporter.
Oh my God, I can imagine.
The presidential elections, again, I was in Doral where Trump national whatever the hotel
what is it,
Trump
tower
tower yeah, that resort or whatever is there. And so that's like that was the coincidental place where people would like go to like protest and whatever or be supporters of Trump, and Trump was in town, and it was literally a side for like Cubanos con Biden, and there was a side for like people that were pro-Trump. And they're on like it's separate. Like 87th is literally separating the
You
two
could
groups.
see the
You can
divide.
see the actual divide, and they're like screaming at each other, communists, and like whatever, like the whole Miami
Yeah.
vibe that comes with politics. And you're just there and covering that. And I think that was fun for me to cover because it's just seeing like
I mean, it's history
politics
in the
here. Yeah,
making. Yeah.
exactly. I also got to cover Obama. Like I went to a press, and it was actually at FIU at the
Nice.
campus where I did all of my like journalism classes. So it's like Obama was right in front of the building where I started journalism seriously in college. And that was such a full circle moment because it was like, first of all, Obama was president when I was like, he became president when I was in third grade. So, like, to me, he's like
The first
the
president that's
first
in your
president.
radar.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, I had George Bush, but like,
You wouldn't remember.
yeah,
You
like
wouldn't really remember.
it was like, I mean, at 7 years old, there's so much I can care about, politics. So Obama he was like the president, like my first president to me, and just seeing that he was campaigning for Biden and just seeing him there and like being in a position where I have access to being there is so much fun too.
Right. How do you approach a topic, an issue, a story where you don't necessarily agree or feel connected to?
So agree and connected to I think are different. So
Yeah.
agreeing, it would be a story is what it is. Like again, I covered for the Miami New Times about how Gen Zers feel about abortion rights. It's not that I love abortion rights. It's just it's been in the topic a
It
lot
has,
lately,
yeah, for
especially
sure.
with the Florida legislature right now too. So it's always a constant topic. Fortunately or unfortunately, however you feel about that.
Yeah, it goes both ways.
Correct. So I was covering this article, and like I had people that I would more so agree and people that I more so wouldn't agree. But what was cool about it is that I don't let that whatever my opinion is influence it. It's more so like
You can separate
you
it?
can separate it, like compartmentalize it,
Yeah.
and then also it's opening a discussion. It's not closing yourself off like I think this way, again back into your little bubbles. Like I had a lot of Gen Zers, I had some Gen Zers that were pro-life, but they were open to like the idea that like maybe the way that they grew up, or maybe like there's no fault. Obviously the other side is a little harder to like try to convince to like
Yeah.
the pro-life approach, but like there was a very openness in all of the conversations where it's like we're human, we get to like share our perspectives. And I think that's, if you focus on that instead of like trying to like push an agenda, because you and I will feel the same way or not feel the same way about something, but at the end of the day there's a conversation to be had.
Right.
So focusing on that conversation is more so on the agree. In terms of comfortableness, I don't think I'm uncomfortable with anything to cover wise. It's more so of like what I choose, especially as a freelancer, on what I want to cover and what I don't. So like again, like criminal, like you're not gonna catch me like like police shootings, things like that,
No
like in
crime
crime
scenes.
scenes. Like for me, it's not my, I'm sure there's some journalists that love that rush and love, but for me, it's not my thing. So I think I would more so just turn down those opportunities and just focus on the things that I like to write about and like create stories about.
Yeah. You brought up so many good points. Especially about focusing on the conversation and creating the space for that conversation to be had. Because not just young people, but the older generations too. I feel like everyone's so into this is my opinion and there's nothing you can do about it. Um, and everyone wants to talk, but no one wants to listen or
Exactly.
read in this case. And I think that's just so important not to listen so that you can have your mind changed. If it's your opinion and it stands still after having a conversation, then great.
Mm-hmm.
But what if you take something from
Out
that
of it.
conversation, you know?
And you also see a lot of, there's gonna be a middle ground. There's stuff that you're gonna like agree on
Yeah.
regardless. So for example, I covered when where Miami-Dade's mayor was up for election last year, 2020, was it also
I
2020?
think
Yeah, I think it
time
was,
is
it's so
somehow
warped.
like yeah,
For
I think it
me,
was last year.
yeah, I think they ran in 2020, but it was like 2021 was the whole full year that they started.
Right.
Anyways, it was again, it was Bovo, Steve
Yes.
Bovo versus who is mayor now, Danilo Levine Cava. And so I did a feature on both of their campaign managers because they were 20-year-olds, 20 something year olds, like 24, 25-year-olds on opposite sides of the race. So obviously it
What?
was
So did you write about Nadir Perez?
no, I wrote about my I don't want to
Oh, okay, no, then
no,
let's
not even
not.
the names. It's just I it's because se me está pasando el
See,
nombre,
it's
and like
okay.
I don't want to make them feel
Yeah,
bad.
yeah. No, no,
But
no.
I
Don't
just
worry.
talked to a lot of people. It was
Yeah.
Gomez and again like se me van los nombres right now just because I'm on the spot. I follow them, I keep a track of them. But the point
Because I
being,
think he was involved in one of those campaigns. I don't recall exactly which one.
yeah, I think there was a lot of like
But
campaign
he's
managers, but these were just like the two that
that
I came
yeah.
across from. And so that story, like, one of them was clearly Republican leaning and the other one is Democrat leaning because even though it's a nonpartisan race, like people
Yeah.
have their political views. And so they had so much in common other than like the campaign or whatever they were like whatever their beliefs were on how they got involved in politics, like what they wanted, out of this generation to do in politics. So that middle ground made the story so enriching because even though they're going for opposite candidates, it's literally the
The
same
same
idea,
thing,
the
yeah.
same motivation, maybe not the similar values and different like perspectives, but those things, it's what blows my mind. It's like opening those conversations where you see like we might be different in how we view the world, but we also have a lot of common like
Right.
ground.
I think that's so cool.
Yeah.
It's so we really need more journalists like you that are just framing the bigger picture, because everything's so focused right now on um just the microcosm of things. This is the issue and everyone needs to like be really upset about it. And we forget, like you mentioned, there's just so many other layers to people because we're complex.
And also just a local angle too. I
Yeah.
feel like when there's like the big elections, people focus on like Trump versus Biden, but at the end of the day, like
You live in
you
Florida.
live in Florida, you live in Miami. There's like so many local governments like down just
Yeah.
from that. Like I promise you, like obviously whoever leads the country is important, but your day to day
Yeah.
is not going to be as affected by it by instead of like the people in your like state legislature, your
Mhm.
people in your city hall and things like that. And that as a journalist, I realized how disconnected the community is with that. I was covering in college Coconut Grove, my beat was Coconut Grove, and I was covering when Ken Russell, who I believe is District 2, in City Hall, in Miami City Hall, he was running for re-election. And I was covering everything, and from the amount of people that were registered to vote, 6% voted. And this is the
That's
district
crazy.
that encompasses Coconut Grove, Brickell, and downtown.
Three major
Like the Miami,
cities in
yeah,
Miami, yeah,
like
or
parts,
right, not
neighborhoods.
cities exactly. Thank you, neighborhoods. That's the word I was looking for.
So it's like how, and then you already know that usually the people that go show up and vote are elderly, people that have more time. Like
Mhm.
there's a demographic that always shows up to vote. So it's
Yeah,
like, how could you care more about like Trump versus Biden and like arguing online, but when it comes to like who fixes your city's potholes, what happens to
exactly.
Biscayne Bay, then it's like, oh, like I don't even know
I
who's in
don't have
office.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's
then
so
you
true.
you really don't care, and I think that really opened up my eyes to like how can we get people to care about local community, and that's why local journalism is so important because they're covering the stories that aren't going to affect you. And if you want to, the New York Times is amazing, Washington Post is great, but they're going to cover on a national level. And that's maybe they'll spotlight, Miami, or they'll come down and cover things like tragic incidents like Surfside and things like
Right.
that, but they're not going to tell you the day to day. They're not going to tell you how your life is going to change because of maybe someone on like the Florida legislature did a bill or stuff like that. You really have to kind of
Exactly.
search for sources and
Yeah.
search for outlets that cover that.
So, how do you suggest people become more supportive of local journalism?
I think that being in tuned with like daily news, obviously you don't have to spend like hours, but like if you wake up in the morning, and I have to do this myself too, like it's not like, I try to not be a journalist all the time. I try to like sometimes,
You
especially on the
try to
weekends.
disengage.
Yeah, because if not, like it does take a toll out of you after a while to always be in tune with the news. But just like headlines, I would love to also like incorporate in some of like my projects where like you can make the even more digestible. Like social media is right now, especially during that 2020, the pandemic, all the protests that were going, the various protests that were going on, social media has shifted from just being Instagram photos like my perfect lifestyle to informative, and that comes with a lot of media literacy that needs to be done in order to consume that type of graphics and checking sources, because not everything you see online was done by journalists or was done by people that like fact checked,
and so many things get taken out of context.
Exactly.
And you get like a headline, and then all of a sudden the reader's an expert.
Exactly.
And it's like, you read half a sentence. How do you have something to say?
Exactly. So I think that it's using media literacy. If you don't know how, like, even I'm sure there's courses. I would love to even expand my own media literacy, because it's always being able to analyze what's in front of you, and also just being connected to your community. Like, if you follow all the local journalists, like they all have Twitters, like they all have Facebooks. There's multiple avenues that you can stay in tune, and they'll report on the spot, and then you just know. It's like the same thing. If you're gonna watch some cat video on it, you might as well also watch something cool that's happening, or something important that's happening in your local community. So I think things like that, it's very important. And also supporting them with any type of content creation or any type of online presence. Like we're competing for the audience's attention, and we're competing with TikTok videos, we're competing with Netflix
cat videos, like you said.
Everything is a competition of attention, and right now no one has attention. Like, people are very like this. So promoting things, like promoting stories that you read in a great article, and you're like, hey, let me share it to like with my friends that like would take something of value. I think things like that go a long way, because it creates like more of a community.
Exactly. And once you point something out to a friend, let's say, you really realize how much people will care if you let them know, like, hey, did you know about this? And then all of a sudden that takes a life of its own.
And you get to sound more smart. I don't want to put it like that, but like you know what's going on. Like you can like talk about something, and not just be like,
you can fill your life with more substantial information and things that probably will be fulfilling, as opposed to just cat videos.
Exactly.
Nothing against cats.
Yeah, I have to.
We like cats. Just, there are other things that you should be looking at.
Exactly. So it's finding that balance, because I know with the pandemic, everyone's tired of like hearing about it. And, or I'm tired. Like I'm tired of hearing about it.
There's also a distrust with media, which I think that's where local journalism, it's like the hero of the day, and you guys come in and save it, because there's so much distrust. People don't trust what they read or see anymore, and there's always that question of, well, what's their agenda? Why are they reporting on this?
Of course. And it's like, that's why always consume any type of media, not even like just news, with a grain of salt. And like again, it goes back to media literacy and being able to analyze what's being presented in front of you. But even as a journalist, it's very hard. Again, it's not my beat, I didn't really cover it, but just from a health perspective, any health reporter in Florida trying to get data when maybe the government wasn't being too like easy to access that data, or when the CDC changes their guidelines, it's like you're reporting something X amount of months, and then now any government figure comes, and who knows, that goes, you can distrust politics and all of that in yourself, and be like, what was the motive in switching those guidelines or whatever. And however you feel about masks or vaccines or whatever, there's agendas everywhere, not just in media, but like in life.
Everyone seems to have one nowadays. So it just creates this like pot of bad sentiment all around.
So it's like looking past that, and it's like, okay, but you can clearly see certain issues that are happening, something that I want to discuss right now, and it's a story that I want to work on collaboratively at WLRN, and hopefully it does come to fruition. Is like there's a lot of retail workers and hospitality workers that not only fronted all of the pandemic because they were front line, quote unquote. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, some are, but like, me selling jewelry or selling shoes wasn't very front line. They were still doing, it's not a necessity. Like, it's a great job, but it's
Yeah.
not a job that continues, like, keeps the humanity going.
Right.
So they were forced to deal with whatever was thrown at them throughout the pandemic, just like we all were, but, they were customer service at the end of the day.
Yeah.
They're, dealing with that. Now we're in a time where, the CDC has lifted mask mandates, has shortened like quarantine times, which maybe is, or, I'm not a scientist, so I cannot speak on whether it is or not like the correct move. I have no idea. And that's why you let the scientists do the research and stuff. But there's still people that are being impacted by that. There's still, Miami's a community, a place where people live with their grandparents, that
Mm-hmm.
people live with like immunocompromised people. Maybe I just work and I don't want to get sick again because a tourist that came from another country in the airport caught the virus, and now I'm sick and I don't get to work for X amount of days.
Right.
So there's still, just because there's a more relaxed view of the pandemic's still not over, and there's still stories. Obviously, we don't want to keep talking about, like, we want to move on as humans and, move on with our lives, but it's also like we can clearly see people, there's such, right now, people don't want to work in retail or hospitality, and there's a great demand for workers, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
being fulfilled, even though unemployment is going down, because people just don't want to do those jobs.
Yeah.
And when you see trends like that, you have to kind of stop and ask, like, why?
Yeah, the big question. Why? What's going on? I mean, and so there's this bistro that we
Mm-hmm.
go to all the time.
Yeah.
So it's called Sucre Bistro. They're amazing. We love them. And I want to say like a month ago, they had to start shutting their, like, changing their schedule. No more openings on Mondays. So now they're closed on Mondays because they don't have workers. And they're, in a great neighborhood. They have it would be like a great place to work at. They have a great vibe going on, and they cannot find people to come in for a full 6-day week of work.
Exactly.
And you're so right. And this is an issue that's affecting everybody. It's not just about the mask anymore, as you
Yeah, it's,
mentioned, like, okay, we don't have to talk about that. Everyone's tired of that. But there are other things
yeah.
surrounding that do need to be brought into the spotlight.
Yeah, and you can't always do like A leads to B when it comes to journalism or in life
Right.
generally, because it's just, there's so many factors that go
Yeah.
into like maybe people not wanting to work, whether that be wage stagnation, whether that be like COVID procedures, or whether that be that, work from home. There's so many conversations within any
Yeah.
issue. So it's like really finding what your readers or your audience cares the most, or what will provide most value. And that's news judgment too. Like, people swear that anyone could be a journalist. But it's an art, I do see
For
it as an
sure.
art. I see it as something that you develop, you shape, you become a more skilled worker.
It definitely is an art, but it goes even beyond that. You're like the mouthpiece, right? You're the tying element between issues and the masses.
Yeah.
And you're that common denominator
There's a
that
reason we're in the Constitution.
exactly. Thank you. There's a reason, and it's a very important reason.
And not to like point it back to like the old um presidency and stuff like that, but that was also a really hard time to be a
Yeah.
journalist, because people, I would be reporting on the street, and I covered a lot of like pro Trump stuff because that's, Miami, it's
Yeah.
what happens. And I'm lucky that I'm like a young girl, like, little sweet face, like, and stuff like that. But like, still, you would hear stuff that it's like, I don't trust the media, I don't want to talk to you, not everyone was rude about it, but it's like there was a lot of conversation nationally about, the role of the media and that perceived bias, or the true bias that there is in there. But it was just so, it became like its own, like, us versus against them,
Yeah.
when we're trying to serve the public, regardless of your Republican, Democratic, regardless
Right.
of your view on anything. Like, we're trying to serve you, we're trying to inform you, and for you to blatantly just like discredit our work, that was a hard time to. I remember when Trump won, like, and me knowing that like my whole career was going to be covering, you know Trump, it was rhetoric that was being heard that was, very scary to like be a journalist.
Yeah, you felt that way. You felt
Yeah.
it.
Like even though it didn't nothing ever happened to me or nothing was like, you always have to be like careful and things like that. So it's I feel like people need to appreciate journalists more, not just because I am one, but because I see so many amazing journalists that I know and that like they deserve like all the awards, they deserve all the work, and it's a also an underpaying job.
It is.
And a lot of people like they love what they do to be able it's like teachers.
Yeah, it really
So
is.
they love what they
And you're
do.
out there in the trenches and, putting so much into one piece because it's not just to sit down and write it, it's everything that comes before it, to planning, the preparation, talking to people, checking your sources, doing the research, framing this in a way where people can read it and connect and understand.
and
It's
and then
just,
you have to engage them because it's not like you're competing for attention, so you have to make it
yeah.
attractive too, so
Yeah,
it's
it's
a lot of
there's
work.
so many things that go into it, and then you're not compensated. It's
Exactly. So that was also very difficult, especially with like the pandemic and all of that. It was very difficult because I decided to do this career. I decided that, and we'll talk a little bit about making it Miami and what I see
yeah,
myself now. Because although I see myself as a journalist, even if I have a part time, full time bussing tables or
it's who
selling
you
or whatever, it
are.
is who I am.
It's
It's the
it's
skill
ingrained in
set.
you, and whoever knows you, and I'm sure whoever reads your pieces can see that.
Yeah, so like I'll always, even if I never do journalism again, even if I like completely, I did a minor in marketing. I love social media content creation. I have so many passions that where journalism fits naturally, all the skill set fits in there beautifully, but I don't have to be reporting against City Hall or just like,
Yeah,
it's not the traditional journalist. Like it's not like I don't have to validate myself and be like, oh, if I'm not a New York Times journalist, then I'm not a journalist. Like, I'll always be a journalist.
right.
It's just more so like what's going to be more fulfilling. And that's why I choose not to cover certain topics or certain beats. Or I want to, expand what I'm doing. Um, and so I think that journalists really need to kind of be recognized for the amount of work that they do because they care. And I'll always even see that with journalists that retire or that like have a lot of them have left
Yeah,
the field because it's a lot of pressure, a lot of under
it's a kind of
compensation.
career that like wears you down,
Yeah, you have to be
through
constantly on
time.
stuff.
Yeah,
And that's why I've taken breaks. I've freelanced fully. I've done months where I'm just like consistently like shooting out stories, being behind the scenes producing, but writing stuff, whatever. But then afterwards you kind of just like need a tune out. Like maybe I didn't see what's going on in the weekend because I just
yeah.
on covering
That's a
everything.
wise and smart way of going about it, to kind of know when you need a little time off.
Yeah, and not everyone has the luxury of that, or some people agree, like, and again, never knocking anything, but for me, I would have to find a really great job that aligns with, like, for example, what I love what Vice News does, even though
Yeah.
there's controversies everywhere, so like there's always gonna be like something, but like I love like even the documentaries that you see Hulu and Netflix coming out in partnership with like the New York Times or things like that. I think is so amazing. It like I get so excited to watch it. I would love to be part of things like that. And that's still journalism. It's just like
Yeah.
producing journalism. It's like a different medium. I've been able to do writing. I've been able to do audio and radio journalism. And so I like to kind of be a jack of all trades and get my feet wet with everything. And that's how you learn what you want to do.
For sure. Would you ever write a book?
Yes, I literally have been thinking about it because I like writing. It's just like I don't know what I would want to write as of yet.
Yeah. It'll
I
come to
It'll
you.
come to me. I think that I've never been like a creative writing person. Like I've
Yeah.
never was like one to be like, yeah, like I want to do creative writing as in classes and stuff like that. I'm very much like research and again, I like creative writing when it's like putting together like a
Mhm.
human story and things like that, but I'm not going to go write fiction or anything
Yeah.
like that. But I think that when you have a lot to say, which
Mhm.
I do, on like I just have to figure out what I want to say about it. Um, there's an audience for it, and so like I've
Definitely.
brainstormed. Like, I moved out when I was very young. I moved out at 18, basically when I was graduating high school, and that was just out of sheer independency and like just wanting to, start my own life. I've just always been very driven that way. And so I had to figure out life. And a lot of people have to figure out life, whether that be when you're 18 or when you graduate college or the rest of your life, because you never stop finishing figuring it out, which is what
My
you
God,
realize.
that's so true.
And so I, for a time, I wanted to do like either a podcast or like a blog or something on adulting because, trial and error, it's a human story. It's something that people are always going to come of age and people are always going to, become adults and like want to figure out how things work. That's why on TikTok you see cooking videos so popular now because people don't know how to cook and they're like, okay, here I'm being taught. Or literally budgeting. For me, I'm such a planner, I'm an organizer, I love, but not everyone's like that. So sometimes people need like tools and guidance on how to like organize their life. And I'm really proud with where I am in my life in terms of like my career. And sometimes I'm very perfectionist and I'm such a like driven person that I always think it's not enough. Like I'm so behind and I'm not, but it's like I want to share. I've always wanted to share that story. I just don't know exactly how I would go about doing it. So I've just been sitting on it, but I definitely do think that it'd be so rewarding to write a book.
I think that you would be so good at it. I think that would be amazing.
It'd be exciting.
Yeah.
You should help me out with that.
Say no more. You got it. We'll have our first meeting tomorrow.
I'm gonna hold you to that.
No, seriously, I think that would be so good. So cool.
And I also want to connect more to reading because I think once I left school, I stopped reading. As a kid.
It happens a lot.
Yeah, as a kid, you love reading. Like, I remember, like, I would read the Harry Potter books in a day. Like, literally, it's like 500 pages. I would just stay up and read it because I loved it so much. And now it's like, I don't even know what books to read because it's like content. It's just, there's so many options. And you don't want to, like, waste money. I don't want to say waste money, but, like, you don't want to put money or time.
Books are expensive.
Yeah, you don't want to put effort or time or financial, like, anything into something and it not give you like something in return. So I think that I always want to continue learning, and as an adult that's something. And how do you balance that? How do you balance not having time to do those things? And that's something that I'm still learning to do. So I've always like really gravitated towards like that lifestyle type of topics, and because it's still important, obviously. Like that's why, Vogue magazine, that's why Teen Vogue, that's why the HGTV, all of that's popular because we all want to be able to live our lives the best way possible. And if I were to transition into something like that, I wouldn't consider myself leaving journalism. It's just taking those skill sets and putting it into somewhere else.
Which is why I asked that question, because I think the skills that you have and the passion that you have for writing would translate so well into a book. Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait to see what you come up with.
Yeah, I mean, I put a pause into all of the adulting and things like that just because I still when I do it, I want to do it right.
Yeah.
And that's what sometimes
I believe in divine timing as well.
Yeah.
Things happen when they're meant to happen. Exactly. As long as you're working on it. It doesn't mean that you're just going to forget about it and wait for someone to knock on your door and be like, "Hey, Natalia, you want to write a book?" But,
I think it also has to do with, like, sometimes trying to be the first backfires. And that's what I love about, like, for example, WLRN. They're never trying to be the first one to break the story. They want to make sure that the story's correct, that the story's done properly.
Right.
Same thing as with a project. You don't want to be the first to, like, cover a gallery opening, but then it be, like, a crappy video, or like it's something that you put. I want everything that I do, I want it to be the best, and I want it to come out and like, me not want to have change it afterwards, or maybe but grow from it. I don't want it to do something rushed. And so I transitioned to putting that idea on hold until I figure out what I want to do with it. And I started making it Miami.
Yes, let's talk about that. Tell me everything. I want to know everything.
Okay, so
how did it start?
It started with the whole conversation of growing up in Miami. There was no sense of community, or I just felt very disconnected from it because like I didn't know what was going on. And I saw that also in like journalism and in my friends or people just not knowing what's going on, translating it into something that is a mixture of like being human in Miami. I don't want to say it's not news because it's not, I don't really focus on news. I'll cover some
Right.
aspects of news. It's not just lifestyle. Like, I'm not just going to show you where to go to Miami to eat. There's a bunch of pages for that. They're great pages, they're very successful pages, but it's content that has value, but maybe not as much substance to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so making it Miami right now is an Instagram. I want to grow it to have like a website and more components to it, YouTube, things like that. Obviously, I need time and funding,
Yeah.
and anyone else
Little by little.
interested into it, we can talk about it. But it's basically putting the best of Miami out, which is what you do with the podcast. And that's why I loved it immediately and why I wanted to be on it, because it's literally showcasing that Miami is more than just the beaches and the clubs and, the I live where you vacation lifestyle, because we don't all like always have that lifestyle. Yeah, the beach is 20 minutes away, but I don't go.
I haven't been all year, and we're like about to start April.
Exactly. So it's to show, I want to gravitate towards like pieces where it's like showing people, like for example Diana Didi Rock, the artist, showing the name itself, making it Miami, has so much meaning to me, because it's like, what makes Miami, and that's what I want to cover it. How do you make it in Miami? And like the human stories of like these successful stories of people that followed their passion, because sometimes you think, again, like in hindsight, I never thought I was going to be a journalist and stuff like that. And it doesn't seem like the tradition, at least to me, I don't think people see it as like, that's the traditional job you want to have. So it's like, there's all these people like culinary, like arts. Miami-Dade College has a great program, like finding out the people that are coming out of that and like what they're doing. Artists, in Wynwood, we see, like I had seen Diana's pieces growing up through Wynwood.
Yeah, because she started like 10 years ago. Exactly. So right when you would have been,
and they're very distinctive,
discovering Wynwood. Yeah.
So you like can see, like I can clearly, I had seen it before. I just didn't know who it was.
Yesterday, I was driving, running errands. I was driving home. I looked to my right, and there's a bus with her, like one of her famous pieces with the girl that has the ocean for hair.
I was gonna say like a mermaid vibe.
Yeah, it was on it. I was just like so excited to see, and see her on a bus. I was like, this is my Carrie Bradshaw moment, even though I'm not the artist, but still, she's my friend, so I love her.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so making it Miami is just focusing on anything that like really showcases how beautiful it is and how much appreciation I have for Miami now that I'm older, and now that I want to bring that to people's phones or people's houses or whatever it is, however they're consuming the media. I want them to like be proud, because we have like Only in Dades and stuff like that, but that's like, it's more entertainment than it is like, meaningful conversation.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say that it's entertaining, and it's even entertaining in a way where you kind of don't want to look, but you have to. It's like showcasing the worst moments sometimes in people's lives here. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it.
Exactly. I mean, again, it's they're successful, and I'll never knock anyone for like seeing a need, whatever that need may be, in entertainment or whatever.
I agree.
But I think that I want to differentiate myself from the Miami food bloggers, even though I want to cover those things too, because it's fun, and sometimes
and we do have great food here,
and we do, and that's part of the culture. But instead of just being like okay, let me not put it like that, but like $30 to spend in whatever place, and I feel like that's a very direct, because there's a certain page that does like videos like that, so I don't mean to knock
I'm gonna have to look it up now.
I'll send it to you, but it's great and it's entertaining and like it gives you ideas, and I have done videos on making Miami like that, but I also want to partner, and this is the second part of making it Miami, with local businesses and highlight things. So for example, I did, and you shared it, thank you so much for sharing. I like
that one a lot.
I met this food truck, it's kind of by like going towards the falls, like where the like US 1 meets I think I-95, like not I-90, no, not US 1 I-95, like towards like after Dayland between the falls, like that
Yes.
area.
Yeah.
And so they're a food truck for Italian food, and the cook, he's Italian, so it's not just like want to be Italian, like no, like this is his grandmother's recipes, like all of the
Yeah.
good stuff. And so I met them, and I wanted to do like a kind of like how you make a traditional like like a plate like pesto pasta, and like have him show it and kind of showcase his talent and know a little bit more about who they are, and connect a local business with the local community and create the value, because that has value, that's bringing in people to
100%.
him, that's feeding, they had just had a kid, that's something that's going to help their family business, that like they put all their savings into that food truck. And so things like that, even if it's like very visual, very fun, like how to make pesto, like if someone knows about them now because of it, I would love to just do that, whether that be with artists, whether that be like something to feel like a feature when
Yeah.
people do articles on like a specific person featuring them, things like that is so beneficial for everyone. Me, the writer, producer, whatever role I play, the subject, and the person that's reading it. And so would I love to somehow kind of make it like a content agency for sure. And that's kind of what I want to build it out to, where, for example, obviously the world runs on money. So it would have to be some kind of like collaboration where it's
Right.
like, I have a vision of how your product can be presented to the world, and my qualifications are I am a journalist, I have the background, I'm very in tune with social media and how to package those things. Maybe not everyone is, because you can't,
Yeah.
social media or marketing or whatever form of production is a full-time job, and people don't understand that you can't just like, okay, let's start recording and put out the best work. And so if I can have some beneficial impact in the local community, I think that would be amazing to see, making it Miami grow to that perspective.
I think it will, because what you're doing with it, I think it's just so cool. And obviously it's very what's the word? Akin to what we do here. So it's to me it's like awesome. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing.
I love it. It's like my first interview, honestly,
Yeah.
that I'm not on like the other
other side.
Yeah. And also like podcasting, I think it's such a cool medium to tell stories, and the visual too.
Yeah, I obviously I love it. I think it's awesome. It's fun. But thank you so much for
Of course,
coming.
and thanks for doing this for Miami. Again, like from one local Miamian to another, I really appreciate that this podcast does exist, and that there's stories being told that go beyond whatever connotation Miami has.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, that's the goal. So we're going to do it. We're going to keep doing it.
Partnering and see how we can really bring love to
for sure
the city we call home.
For sure. And to everybody listening or watching, thank you so much. And we will see you next time.